Welcome back to the evolution of love, where we slow down, tell the truth, and make space for the kind of conversations that grow us. Today's episode is a deep one. We're talking about the people we choose and the people we actually need. And yes, sometimes those are two completely different stories. In this episode, the Healing Squad gets real about why we pick who we pick, how our healing changes what we're drawn to, and what it looks like to finally choose from a grounded, healthy, safe, loving place. This is not about blame. This is about awareness, grace, and evolution. The topic for today is called The People We Choose versus the People We Need. Man. And that one, I feel like got mad layers to it, y'all. Mad layers to it. I know I sent this to you ahead of time, so I want to go ahead and get it started and start with the first question. And feel free, anybody who want to jump in and start cooking. But let's go with the first question. When you think of people you have chosen, what patterns do you notice in who or what you are drawn to? Let's go.
Man, that's an interesting question. For me, I have found as I am on this healing journey now, I have connected myself to people who have trauma, a lot of childhood trauma that they themselves may not have chosen to deal with, are not ready, or they're not ready to face it at the given time, as well as things that I have to work on within myself. I found people who are mirrors for me in areas that I haven't grown or I haven't touched or I haven't landed on in order for myself to heal. So I continue to find people who may have needed me or I needed them, a figure in my life, maybe in childhood that I didn't really receive. I gravitated to those people. And as I continue to gravitate to those people, I wasn't choosing the right people in my life. Because when you want somebody to love you or you're looking for love and you see yourself as not being genuinely loved by yourself, you're always going to choose the wrong people.
That's right on point, Ruth. I think for me, I don't know if I consciously made a choice or I was more doing what I thought was right. And what I mean by that is like I think two of my previous relationships, I was in these relationships because this is what I thought you were supposed to do. This is what a man's supposed to do. And it wasn't built, neither one of those relationships started from a strong foundation. So when you're talking about loving people and being loved, love wasn't necessarily the centerpiece. It was like, oh, doing the right thing was the centerpiece. And so when you start a relationship with a rocky foundation, like you oftentimes you accept whatever people give you. And so, like, there was no way to be within alignment or going the same path because, like, I say for me, I was all about this is what a man should be doing. I'm going to step up and try to take care of my child. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that more out of what I'm trying to avoid, which is being like quote unquote a bit a deadbeat dad or not a good boyfriend or something like that, versus joining a relationship based upon what I need or what based upon love, so to speak.
And I guess I'll I guess I'll come in from that sort of obviously the Growfessor perspective. But so when I think about the question, which is when you think of the people you have chosen, what patterns do you notice in who or what you are drawn to? And if I think about where I am now on my healing journey and looking back, the patterns I noticed was me. And it was also me that I was drawn to. Because I didn't love myself, I was externally looking for love. So the patterns that I was looking for was what was missing from myself and what I was trying to get filled again externally. And when I think about what I was drawn to, it was the stories that I had told myself, which is Mike, all the stories, or not I told myself, but the stories that were told to me which Mike, all the things you said, here's what a man should do, here's what you should do in a relationship. As I was navigating that path and I look back, and this likely holds true for all of us, is that we did not have a healthy foundation of self-love or relational love even as we were getting started. So a lot of the patterns that I think we can look back and we notice, if we ask the question, were we given the tools to have made different decisions? I think that answer is almost categorically and inherently no. And so when I think about what we were drawn to, and I think about what are those patterns that we noticed, I would say we noticed the patterns that was missing from the way we were defining love, and we were drawn to our definitions of love without even knowing what the definition of love was supposed to be.
And I have to say one more thing about that, Growfessor, because you did bring up something good. And from my perspective, it was more of heterosexual love, what that looked like, even though in my world, it was different for me because I thought I had to go by this book. I had to go by what my mom and dad, they were married. When I saw people getting married, it was a man and a woman. And then I looked within myself and I said, that's not who Rue is. That's not who I want to be. So it's not, as growing up, it was you have to follow these norms. You marry a man, you have kids, you have this family, yada, yada, yada. But that's not what it was for me. So the people, I feel like people chose a life for me, but then I wanted to choose my own narrative. And so I was drawing myself to really finding out who Ruth is and understanding who I really was and saying, no, 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 that's not my norm. But I see what your norm is, but mine is totally different.
Ruth,
Yeah.
what I love about you saying that and stepping into it is the sense of the definitions that we're given. We can actually sense it as early as possible that it doesn't fit for us. We just don't have the language. So one, there was not the language for you because there was nobody prepping you with the language of here's how you talk about your identity so that you feel like you're you as you're explaining to everybody else, right? Which is why the whole notion of in the closet, right? I need to go in here to be safe because y'all not there. I think that's one piece that you pulled out. The other piece I pulled out is this other piece, which is you had to figure out what normal was in the context of everybody telling you that your normal is wrong. So not only did that normal not fit, but anything else you was pursuing was also negated. So when you start thinking about the patterns that you notice, if I think about, again, not having gone through that experience, but there wasn't even patterns for you to even look at really good. And if it was something that you probably first saw commercially. And then you again, it's on TV, so you kind of know it's always, but again, you got to learn that what you see on TV is not really real. And so there's so much in what you said when you think about the story of those who are suppressed from what feels natural and okay and normal for them in a context where the environment sees none of that as natural or normal. That's yeah, wow.
Other thing
Right.
I would add is I think when I notice patterns in some of my previous relationship is what I accepted. I don't think I necessarily chose these things. These are like things I just accepted. So because of quote
The
unquote
silent agreements.
societal norms. And like I didn't even when I kept reading, what are you drawn to? What are you drawn to? And I was just like, I don't think I named what I was drawn to or knew what I was drawn to until the relationship I'm in now, because I knew there are certain things that I wanted in a partner. And so once I decided what those things were, I can be intentional with looking, right? Or accepting with intentionality. And I'm not saying like, oh, I have this checklist you need to make $100,000. You need to do this, your credit, you need to have a house. And I'm not saying these kind of checklists. The checklist was like, are you a good person? Where's your heart? Do you understand equity? Do you get culture? Do you get these things? Because I want somebody that can have a widened perspective versus a narrow perspective. But then that's two totally different things. That's accepting what societal society is giving you versus naming what you want. And so when I was able to do that, but that's just growth. But I accept it so much and tolerate it a lot. And all that left me being unhappy and not truly loved.
So this goes back to that piece I talked about up front, is that we aren't giving the tools. We all showed up in silent acceptance of something that we just didn't have no framing for whether it's good or bad or not. And that's what I mean by when we don't teach our kids, or when we start out early and we're not taught how to love ourselves, we are, as Ruth said, we're by default in not loving ourselves are going to end up in some unhealthy relationships. This is why it's important for folks to for us to give those tools. And again, I've got kids from 5 to 23. I can tell y'all now, I am not giving them good relationship tools advice. Like that's just not me sitting down with my 14-year-old. Like, all right, well, look, this is like I teach him how to be responsible, be respectful of himself, but I'm not teaching him the nuances of relationships, what he should be looking for, because he's 14. He's still trying to identify, does he like this instrument or that instrument? Is it this subject or that subject? All right. And there's so much growth that we're undergoing at the time we're also trying to find love, which is why I do the work around unpacking definitions. Because Mike, you said something, and I'm gonna stop here. When you said, do we see the same what is your definition of culture? Right? It's one thing to have that conversation with somebody on our definition of cultures. It is another level of skill to be willing to work through the differences along with the similarities, right? We want to see somebody who has things that we like, and even on the surface where we may like it, like we both may like burgers, we may like different type of burgers. Are you okay with that? And sometimes we're not okay with somebody not liking everything that we like because we haven't taught to be in relationships where it is not about us liking everything together. It is about, do I like you as a person? Can I work with you through complex things? And there's just no framing for that. To what you said, Mike, you got to go through it. And in your growth of going through it, you start to say, you know what? I thought I liked that. I didn't like this. Or we think about the type. We have these types with physical type with no sense of what the character is. And so we're drawn to that physical, and then you find it and you go, there's no character inside of this physical, because we're not even taught to draw the character map before the physical map. And so this is what I mean when I say we aren't even given the tools to be able to be in position to even make, to even Mike's point, let me ask some good questions. What are those good questions? We don't know, right? And I think, how do you get, well, not we don't know. It's just not being passed on in a real-time perspective, in a sense of what I now know now at 48. I'm not giving it to my 14-year-old or my 17-year-old who are in high school, right? My daughter who's in college at 22 is not even trying to listen to me on that, right? And so you start to go and you can see where all of this space where they're actually, even with me, still defining things in their own way, because it's still, I don't know that I've opened the door for them to say, you can ask me these intimate relationship questions, because I'm pretty sure what they heard is, you're 13, don't talk to me about no boyfriend and girlfriend. So now in their mind, this is a shutdown. And so when I think about the people you have chosen and the patterns you notice and what you're drawn to, we're, I'm saying this to say we're drawn to things outside of our home as well, because our home does not create the space where we can go and get that education without judgment. Because now folks are going, are you trying to be fast? What are you trying to do? What do you want to know this for? Versus, where can I go and just be like, I'm curious. Help me sort of process this curiosity I got.
I think there's some connecting pieces between all three of y'all. There's layers, obviously, in your own separate lanes. I think this can almost be beyond drawn to, chosen, and maybe subconsciously chosen. And I say that because I think I was drawn to people who didn't live in my neighborhood, right? I lived on the west side of Chicago near Humboldt Park. My first girlfriend lived on 87th and Prairie. Ruth and Mike, you wouldn't know what that is. Grow, you know where that is. That's two buses and a train all the way to the south side. And I remember um, when I used to do that, not even having one fear in mind because I was so driven because my 4 blocks of my neighborhood, not that there wasn't beauty or what, like there was beauty in my space. And there was obviously people I were drawn to, but I weren't drawn to in that same way because I think because I identified as an Afro Latino, a lot of folks in my neighborhood didn't. They just identified as a Latino. And I believe I was drawn to the South Side because of those roots, right? And I think also maybe a little drawn to because it's part of just who I am. I just spend the weekend in the outdoors here, the outdoors. I think the outdoors draw me to different people and such, which is ironic because that's exactly where I met my wife. Right, it was through the outdoors, via the outdoors, or via the outdoor connection. But when I think of like that space of being in my neighborhood and looking at my peers and who they were dating, the people they were dating took maybe 2 blocks to walk, right? I think that's another part of like what I was put on to. So when I'm like who I was drawn to in the patterns and maybe a little bit of chosen, I think it was the spaces that I was going to that was outside of my neighborhood that allowed me to meet different faces, different people who maybe resonated with me differently. In that sense, not just culturally, just other ways and other levels, because um, I always felt comfortable in my 4 blocks of my neighborhood because my people were all around there. But I always also felt like who I was drawn to really culturally aligned me, who I am as a person, how I talk, all that good shit, right? Moving forward, we're going to marinate on this one. Question number 2. We're going to go for about 10 minutes on this one. Who has shown up in your life, not to please you, but to grow you? And how did that shift your idea of love? Let's go.
Well, for me, anxiety showed up not to please me and to grow me. And it also shifted my idea of love. Um, because I think the people who were in my life, for whatever they taught me, I don't know that they showed up with the intention to teaching me. Anxiety, I know for sure was teaching. It showed up because I had pushed away so much. And it was like, yeah, there's nothing else for you to push in here. You're gonna have to deal with this, right? I was about to be a gasket that was about to blow. And so in that space, this gets into what Mike talked about, and actually Ruth. That's where you start to see the patterns. I feel this way when this happens. I feel this way when this happens. I feel this way. It's when you start doing the work, you start about anxiety. There's nothing about it pleasing. Although my first solution to it though was to exercise more. So now I'm living in the Bay Area. I'm running 6 miles. Obviously, I'm not even a big person anyways. But again, I'm now getting a little chisel. So I'm like, okay. But my friends are like, dude, are you sick and you not telling us because you losing a lot of weight? I'm like, I'm running in the Bay Area for 6 miles. It's hilly, guys. What are y'all talking about? And I think it was in that where I would say this question is my friends showed up in my life not to please me because my friends were always brutal with me in terms of, bro, we thought this was dumb or this was this, right? There was this sort of space there. And so I think between anxiety and the friendships that I forged by choice really positioned me more so than the relationships because I grew after the relationships and not so much as in the relationship because it was at the demise of the relationship that now I'm going in to assess what happened, figuring out what's going on with me. But then it becomes, what is that thing? Anxiety was there independent of the relationships, right? The anxiety was there when my grandmother passed, right? And so how I learned how to recognize that piece. And so I don't necessarily know that I would put it so much as the people, because I think the conditions in which anxiety was probably prevalent for me, I was born into those conditions with all the insecurities that my family had around. So being, not raised by my dad, my mom, my grandmother raising me and not my mom, my feeling of unloved was an anxiety that I always had that I just didn't ever realize it. So I think for me, when I think about it, I think about it less as who's shown up as a person directly. I know that there are folks who have that, but I don't think I had that person who came in my life and was sort of this guide that was intentional about pushing me towards growth. I think there's the growth that naturally happens, but when I think about intentionality, I feel like anxiety was intentional.
I'm gonna try to say this in 2 minutes or less. I have to actually give compliments to my ex-girlfriend. She
Okay.
did not show up to be my friend in a way. Um, Between her and God sat me all the way down and allowed me to see Ruth for who she was, bare naked, and all that she wasn't who she thought she was. And having to really define what love really looked like. I thought love was monetary. I thought love was doing different things for people, but I didn't love me. So, since I didn't love me, how could I genuinely love somebody else the correct way? So, she showed me through how I presented myself to her of really why she had to walk away. I respect the walk away. How you walked away? Nah, but I respect the walk away because it allowed me to see that I still had work to do in how I was showing up, how I was speaking, how I didn't do things in a manner of coming from a loving place, like speaking and not caring about somebody else's feelings at times, and not taking others into consideration and taking choices away from her and others that I was with. So I had to really look back on all the relationships that I had been through and see that I was I wasn't loving Ruth. I was loving the idea of what love could be, the possibility of what love was, but it wasn't really in action until I actually started loving myself after that relationship.
Um, this is a good question, and I like how Growfessor went with anxiety, and I think exes always don't always show up to please in one way or another. That's why they're exes, probably. Um, but I think for me, it was having kids. Um, like you think you know what love is until you have literally a piece of you vulnerable in needing you that didn't ask to be in this world that that haven't asked for anything but need everything from you. And so like when I saw my son for the first time, I knew I needed to do better instantly. Um, and I know I needed to shift and change some behaviors in a way that I had never done before. And there's something, I'm just going to say it, there's something about holding your child, your first child for the first time. It's just different. It's a sense of love that protection. Like I will do anything for you. I will die right now so you can take another breath. And so like that kind of shifted my like I didn't know I could love somebody that deeply. And so once I figured out what that love is, I kind of knew I was like, well, I never loved somebody like this. And so it kind of told me all my relationships weren't real love. That stuff was probably fake and superficial based upon what you can do for me and what I can do for you, not how deeply I feel for you and how deeply you feel for me. And so I would say my kids showed up not to please, but made me grow into supported with my growth into this person that I am.
The one thing I do want to say, because I think this is important, particularly for the nature of the conversation that we're having, is that we wasn't raised to be in healthy relationships. And so I think there's some grace that we have to give for our exes because it wasn't it wasn't us. They had some stuff that happened before us that they had to go through. And this is what I mean by we meet each other at these places and we put these expectations on each other that are not there. I know we have all have had some bad relationships, but I think we ought to be able to look back at our relationships, no matter how it ended, but being able to see that that person didn't come to me any more whole than I came to them whole. And I think this is where, for me, I think it gets a little bit lost in relationships because I think we have expectations for success without rooting preparation that actually delivers success. None of us would send our kids out into the real world telling them that they could be successful without giving them tools. I think this is fundamentally what happens in relationships. We're all taught to seek and find a love, and yet we've not been giving that those tools to say, one, love yourself first, then love how to have relational love with people that are not related to you, and now, as you're exploring these things, you start to identify some things about yourself in different ways. And so I want us to just be a little bit cautious here on as we think about us not loving ourselves, understand that our mates was likely in the same scenario as well, too, where they were not loving themselves, which means you got two folks not loving themselves, pointing fingers at the other person saying, you ain't loving me like I need you to love me. And we all should be saying, let me love myself for me. And when I love myself for me, I can show up to let you know how to love me in a healthy way as well, too. So I just want us to just sort of think about that as we sort of think about our exes as if they were supposed to be in some position to do something for us that we wasn't even in a position to do for them.
I think I speak for myself when I'm thinking about my previous partner. There was an aha that I had. When I was on the journey of self-discovery, I realized I couldn't heal in a way to make her heal too. So we were on two different journeys. And oftentimes in relationship, we think just because we're focusing on something, they're focusing on something. So I took a step, so you're going to take a step. And the hard thing when you're talking about relationships, if you work on you unapologetically in a way that you're growing, sometimes when you look back, you might not recognize your partner, or when your partner looks up, they might not recognize you. You might have become two totally different people, not on not like on purpose, but when you're growing and somebody's stagnant, or you're healing and somebody's still sitting in trauma, you can start going different directions and start having two totally different views on certain situations. Because now I might be looking at something for a wider perspective. And I'm like, oh, that's not right. But I wonder why that's not right. I wonder what he was thinking. I wonder what she's thinking. Or the other person's like, oh, you don't do that, this, and this. And I'm trying to problem solve, and you're trying to shame and blame. And so, like, I think that's kind of goes with what you're saying, Growfessors. Everybody's healing journey isn't always linear or parallel, going at the same pace in the same direction.
That I'm trying to say is that we're at different places at different times, and we haven't even been taught how to be patient with each other. Like, okay, I'm going through this period of getting healing and healthy so that I can help carry us, maintain us, sustain us, fuel us as you are going through your part of the healing. And then the next time, right? This is what it means. This is why when we say 50-50, 100%, like either I'm all in or I'm not, right? And we haven't been taught to work through tough times with each other such that we can give each other space to heal. I think relationships that last are relationships that find that space. But for the most of us, there's a point where it gets too hard. Well, you know what? I'm just better off just healing by myself. You going on your way, and let me find somebody else who's at that place on their journey already. And again, we're contributing to a cycle of I'm healing, and I'm probably about to be in the space with somebody who may not necessarily be there yet. Once again.
Absolutely. I'll say one more thing, and Coach, yeah, I'll give it back to you. I agree with everything that you guys have said thus far, as well as I can honestly say, yeah, I can give credit to a lot of my exes, and I can give credit to myself of how I showed up. I did not show up correctly. I didn't show up. I came with baggage. We all come with different types of baggage. And it's up to you. Are you willing to unpack that baggage, or are you willing to just hold it in and just bleed out on other people instead of trying to work on you? If you can work on you first, and that's what I had to go back to, and that's what she taught me, is I needed to go back and work on Ruth so that Ruth could be a healthier version and continue to be a better version of herself if it's not for her, but for somebody else. But if not for somebody else, let alone a healthier version for me.
The 1,000% Ruth, to say that on top of where you are, yes, you needed to work on you. Is the other person willing while they're not? Are you willing in your healing to be patient with the other person as the other person was being patient with you while you was healing? And so this is where when we get into that heal, well, I healed and I did the work. Okay, well now you need to show up in your grace of healing. But again, to the point that Mike said, I also need to be aware of, am I waking up and going, me and this person are trending in different directions? There's one thing to be walking in different directions from somebody, but there's another thing for somebody just to be a few steps slower than you, or right, they're still sitting, they just not ready yet. How do you show up? Love is a full circle thing, which is not just about what they do while I'm growing. What do I do while they're growing, right? So I love how you said I'm able to own mine and I'm able to see that, because it also sounds like you, with the folks that you were with, were further along in their healing journey versus you in a situation where the person was further along than you was in your healing journey, right? And so this is why I say we got to give ourselves context, because there's always a person you can meet that's going to be at a different space in that healing journey, and your healing kind of looks immature to where they are, or at least not immature, but you going, man, I want that. The question is, am I ready for it? What do I need to do to get there?
Mm. Yeah, I guess when I look at this one, I have a few thoughts on it, but I'm going to keep it really quick so we can get to our third question. When I think of this, I agree with Michael. I'm in consensus of my children is obviously that is one of the first things that just kind of like obviously grew me because I had no damn choice. You become a father, you parent in general, you got to grow. You ain't got no time. There's no manual. You better grow your ass and hurry up because this child is going to grow with you and they're going to catch up. So I always had that mentality, right? But then I also think of my wife, and I shifted in a different space of because the question talks about how it shifts your idea of love. And I mentioned this in a few segments about 4 blocks in my neighborhood. And I say that because for me, and I saw it with others, but I'm going to speak directly for me, it was very such a mentality. And that mentality also lived in love. My love couldn't see out. Even if I was traveling to 87 Red Prairie, right? I was still in Chicago. I just couldn't see out. And my wife allowed that to come outward. One being from a different country. So there was that part. But the other part of it was when she met me, my mentality was so engraved. She would talk to me about career, and I was like, "What are you talking about career? We don't do career around here. We work a job. Like, you get a warehouse job, you do security." I was in that space. I was in such a 4 block mentality, and it was so deeply embedded. And the love she gave me shifted me. And it took some time because I was stubborn and I was deeply rooted in my 4 blocks, right? The Humble Park neighborhood was engraved in me, right? So part of that was her slowly with her love and that helping me see outward because my vision was inward. But she also saw this potential. And that right there shifted and made me believe in love again. Because I have the ex as well that I learned a lot of gems from, right? The biggest gem I learned from that person is who I don't want to be with. Right there. I land my plane on that one. Let's go to number 3. We have question number 3. We got about like 15 minutes for this one. And I really like this question because I spoke about alignment earlier. And man, alignment is important. So I'm going to go right here with this one. What would it look like to choose love? I'm going to throw love in there from alignment instead of attachment. Let's go. We got 15 minutes.
This one, when you showed us the questions, I really like this one because one, I talk when I'm talking with my girlfriend, I always talk about alignment. Are we going in the same directions? Like, so our conversations, I try to frame it as, or arguments or disagreements, I try to frame it as, it's not about right or wrong. Are we in alignment or are we out of alignment? Hmm. And when I also saw this question, I really was thinking about what Growfessor and Ruth, well, all of us have said. Like, are you in alignment with you? Because if you don't love you, if you're not intentional with loving you, you're automatically going to be attached to somebody else because you're seeking what you don't have inside of yourself from somebody else. So if you don't love you, you're looking for love in all the wrong places, so to speak, because you're looking for value and validation from somebody else, and so you're automatically attached to them. And if you're looking for love and validation and value from somebody else, then they can, in a sense, game you. You're shackled in their reality. So you do what I want you to do, then you get my love and affection. You don't do what I do, I'm going to take it away. And so then when that partner or spouse or whoever takes it away, then you're thinking, I'm not worthy. Oh, what did I do in order not to get this? So now you can see yourself doing things that don't align to who you truly are, but you're doing things to be valued and validated. So if you can't love you, you're always going to have a certain attachment issue.
Absolutely. And that's a good response, Mike. I found myself attaching to people because growing up as a kid, for me, it was I wasn't the kid that was always liked. So I attached myself to relationships and wanting people to choose me. Instead of me choosing myself, I wanted to be chosen. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be liked. So I did a lot of people pleasing. And so I would attach myself with people that would say yes. I would attach myself to people who would just breadcrumb me along the way. And then finding out as I started on this healing journey and starting to see who Ruth was, I wanted to align myself with people who I resonate with, who how I love myself, how I show up for myself, how I fill my cup up. I can fill my cup up and you get the overflow of left of what I have, not what's already in my cup, but what's around my cup. I can give that to you. And asking solid questions when you're meeting someone, when you're finding love, when you're wanting to love somebody, and you are building relationships, whether it's friendships, partnership, you have to ask solid questions in regards to, does this person align with me? Is this person going in the same direction as me? Do we have the same goals? If not the same, but are they mirroring together? Are you lifting me up or are you tearing me down? If you're tearing me down, it's just an attachment. But if you're lifting me up and we're building each other up, we are aligning in the same direction.
Ruth, you said something like people pleasing. I love that what you said about it because in my head, people pleasing is an act of self-destruction. I'm gonna say it again. People pleasing is the act of self-destruction. One, you're going to do something not out of love, not out of value, not out of alignment. You're going to do something to make somebody else feel good while you dim your own light, which also breeds insecurities. My voice isn't loud enough. My voice isn't worthy enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not enough. So let me make this other person comfortable and maybe they'll give me something to, I like crummy. I love that. Give me some breadcrumbs so now I can have something or I'm trying to people please in order to feel safe. I think we're all people of color, so we know about quote unquote feeling safe. But you can feel safe. You might people please to feel safe, but you're also sacrificing pieces of you. So that's why I say people pleasing is the greatest act of self-destruction.
I'm all the way on board with everything. So I'm gonna try to close this one up quickly on my end, which is people pleasing and attachment are symptoms of not loving oneself. That's where you go to solve both of those. Alignment, which I think it's ill defined as are you aligned with me? Alignment is, I got this idea, you got this idea. How do we bring our ideas together? And what does that resulting plan look like? The resulting plan is the alignment, not my original thinking or your original thinking. And so much of alignment starts with this sense of, well, it wasn't really aligned with my view. Well, what was y'all joint's view? And did that align? And we've got to sort of move into that space of, Ruth, this gets into what you talk about, those questions. What does alignment look like in careers? We got different careers. You got a career, I got a career. But that doesn't mean alignment means, well, if both of us get an opportunity to relocate, who do we relocate for? Right? That you won't have that alignment. The alignment becomes, okay, we both now have these offers. We talked about them. We came to this conclusion and we said we're agreeing on this. So now that we have reached this agreement, we are now in an alignment. So I'm saying that to define it this way. Alignment requires the agreement of two people on the thing that is a merge of those two things, and not a you got to do it my way or I got to do it your way, because we're not aligned at that point, because you see the one way or the other way, right? And so if I think about this question, it gets into how we are defining things and starting to define things with that level of clarity.
When I see this question and I think of it, and y'all hit on it on some of my thoughts that I was thinking. I've chosen love in both areas, alignment and attachment. My attachment was about 5 years, and it was 5 years of unhappiness. What came out of that unhappiness was my beautiful son, right? So although there was some unhappiness, there was alignment, because the alignment at that time was Adam Perez Jr., right? I believe alignment doesn't just live, it lives in where Grow mentioned. I agree with that piece. But I spoke to the fellows about this the other day. Evolution of love, I'm a big believer of that. Because of that, I've recognized and I realized through experience that alignment goes in different directions. Sometimes alignment ain't like this. Sometimes alignment is like this. Right? It's gonna come from up and down. And what I mean by that, I've always been aligned with my missus. We're soulmates, right? We're partners in that way. But there's things in the beginning of our marriage that we weren't aligned on, right? But there was things that we were aligned on, and those things that we were aligned on overshadowed the alignments that weren't aligned on at that moment. And what it told me was, at that time, our age of our marriage didn't allow that alignment to blossom. It took a little more time, that evolution of love that I talk about, that every 5 years that goes around and you do something different. It doesn't mean y'all change yourselves completely. It means you do one thing different than you did the last 5 years, and you implement it, right? Well, I say that, I found out that alignment, although it is eye to eye and it's heart to heart, and we have an end goal. We raised three children here. We took care of them, and we're going to continue to go this way in this alignment. And then there's the individual spaces, there's the spiritual alignment, right? Because when I go into the spiritual alignment, there's no really identity that I can just point to at it, right? The spiritual piece is just, I feel it. It's in my heart, man. I feel that shit align like a champ. It resonates in the spirit. And sometimes it happens through music, because music is just the blessings. And we'll look at each other and be hitting the same note with that thing, because that align of that spirit. Or we catch each other at a moment, and y'all know this, y'all been in a relationship, and those beautiful moments where you're in the same room and you catch each other and you look at each other and you just smile. Nothing else. It's just a smile, right? It's just an acknowledgement. It's an alignment. So I feel like there's this visual alignment. So it can be spiritual. It can be visual. It can be parental. It can be individual, right? So that's why I say it can fall in lanes. And I think sometimes when that alignment's crooked and we're not ready for it to be that way, it feels off alignment. But what I do believe is just alignment growing in a different way. It's kind of coming in a different direction and saying, nope, you thought I was coming from the left. My ass is coming from the right. And then I'm going to come from the middle, but you're going to feel it and you're going to love it, because at the end of the day, you're going to be aligned with your missus or whatever you're doing. And trust me, I think just in love, and speaking to the attachment piece real quick, when I was in the attachment, I thought I was in love. But the attachment wasn't enough for me to get to know this person in the way for me to fall in love with the motherfucker. Just, I mean, it's straight facts. I'm gonna land my plane there. Let's go to tangible resources, y'all. The
Before
title
you get
of
that
this.
tangible resource, I do want to say something that because you did call this out really well, which is alignment requires work and it's not just overnight. And
Mhm.
it may take a series of conversations to get to that point. And that's what I mean by that piece of working together. And to something you said, we may be aligned this way today. Something happens and we may need to think through realignment, right? And so we need to understand that alignment is not a one-time agreement. It needs to be revisited. It will be revisited. And we have to
Mhm.
be open to everybody's evolution of going to something you said easy earlier, which is I used to feel this way about this thing. Now I feel this way over here. Are we now at odds or does this still work for us? Ruth, you've made a really great point. We got to start asking those real questions about the stuff that we're feeling and say it out loud. Hey, I'm having this sort of sensation. It's giving me these thoughts. How do you see this? And that's also alignment. I'm trying to ask the question is, am I feeling something by myself? Is this something I need to go work on? Or is this something you and I need to do some a little bit more time and work on, right? Alignment requires that consistency of effort. And I love how you talked about when you had your kid. And we had to decide how are we going to be aligned to raise this kid because I'm over here in this other relationship. That's still an alignment that has to happen, right? So, yeah, appreciate that pull out, coach.
All right. Title: The people we choose versus the people we need. What's the tangible resources? Not on the questions, but focusing on the title, right? If you're giving some tangible resources to our audience, what is the 1-2 punch from all of y'all? And we will end this segment. But y'all cooked today. Y'all dropped some gems. Thank y'all. I appreciate it. Let me know what the tangible resources.
I would give people two tangible resources. I think everybody talked about this several times. How you love you matters. So if you're looking for love within somebody else without loving yourself, you're losing. So be intentional with how you love yourself. One tangible resource is gratitude for self. Write down your superpowers, write down things that you love about you so you can start to explore the depths of you first and foremost. And the other thing, tangible resource or advice I would give a person is choose who you love. Don't let that person choose you. And what I mean by that, sometimes we're accepting of any and everything versus saying what we want and need that fulfills what we want and need. Two totally different things.
Say you don't need anyone. You don't need anyone but yourself, but you can choose the right people in your life. You can choose people that are going in the same direction as you, but you don't need them. They bring value to your life, but again, just choose wisely. Choose with your heart and choose with your mind and choose with the senses that God is giving you to make right and better choices.
Thank you for joining us on the evolution of love. Keep growing, keep listening, and keep choosing what aligns with your spirit. Until next time, who's helping you heal?